On this week's episode of the K12 Tech Talk podcast, we talk about a new law out of California that aims to safeguard students from AI chatbots before we revisit the new startup company trying a radical approach to school safety using drones. Thanks for listening.
Live from the NTP studios, this is the K12 Tech Talk podcast. This is episode 236. This is a little different. If you can't tell, we're not in our normal studio setting. Chris and I are in Chicago. Hello, Chris.
What's up?
Hey, it didn't echo. Mark is not in Chicago. Hello, Mark.
Hey.
You look really cold, Mark.
Yeah, I got cold this week. Like, summer's over. Fall is in full swing. Leaves are falling. It's raining.
Yeah, it's like 65 here in Chicago. Back home in St. Louis, it's like, my wife said it was like 80 today. Sunny, hot. So Chris and I are up here for the Google Education Leader Series, which has been super cool. Got to meet some fun people and talk about some fun things.
But then we signed an NDA.
Yeah, we can't talk about it.
And they reminded us a couple times about it.
Yeah, and specifically called out, if you have a podcast, you can't talk about this. And we know who that was directed at.
I think you're breaking that right now.
No,
we're literally talking about them saying, do not talk about this.
Whoa. Surely that's okay.
Well, we'll find out, won't we?
Anyway, Mark, what have you been up to?
Not much. I was giving you guys the play-by-play today as I sat in jury duty. Almost got stuck for a couple of week trial, so I'm free.
That would have been pretty wild. I've only been on jury duty once, and it was not a fun case. It was the domestic violence case, and the guy that we sent to jail, I ran into at Walmart like a couple weeks later. I guess he was out on like retrial or something. I don't know.
Justice served. Hey man, what's going on?
Yeah, I turn in this corner at Walmart and I see the guy and I'm like, oh, I like backpedaled real quick.
I mean, I don't know about your courts, but I was told not to talk about anything. So it's just like break all the NDAs night here on the podcast. What else are you going to talk about, Josh, that you're not allowed to talk about?
His name. I think it was Larry or whatever.
There you go. There you go.
It's fine.
So yeah, Chris and I took the train up to Chicago. That was fun, right, Chris?
1000%. Always a great time to travel with Josh.
Hey, traveling on a train with me is low key versus flying with me.
I still got a picture covertly taken by Chris of you, and you looked very stressed and stoic on the train.
Yeah.
So
I was either playing Balatro or checking my email when he took that. I saw him take it out of the corner of my eye.
But if our train had to pass another train, he got quiet.
Yeah, I did.
Josh, you know they pass on different tracks.
Yes, I know that, Mark. I just didn't want my arm hanging out the window or something and it getting taken off.
I felt that same way, Mark. I don't know.
Not that the windows on the train open or anything.
I was going to ask. I don't think the train window's open, and
No,
I don't think you're sticking your arm out at full length to high-five the engineer as he passes by at 100 miles an hour.
Cool. That would be an engineer would be a cool job. And if you've never tried,
an engineer would be a cool job, Josh.
It would be, wouldn't it? On a train engineer, that would be so cool. If you've never tried to pee on a moving train, that is a wild experience as well. Just saying.
I mean, the windows weren't opening, so I don't know what you were thinking you were doing.
No, Mark. That's not where I was going with that.
I don't know.
Hey, Mark, Chris, you want to sponsor while they're still with us?
We do have several sponsors tonight, and I think because it is a special episode, if we can get into the actual episode content, I'm going to talk about all of them really quick. So thank you to Lightspeed Systems. They have that new product Signal. I did a review over on K12 Tech Pro. So check out Lightspeed, check out their Signal product. Fortinet, a great sponsor, been with us for a long time. Email FortinetPodcast@fortinet.net for your FortiGate and all of your Forti needs. Extreme Networks, just the same. You can email D Mayer, Dominic Mayer over at Extreme. And then last but not least, Chromebookparts.com. I've used Chromebookparts.com for many years now to get my Chromebook parts, but they have some pretty good specials too. They'll buy back your stuff, give you some credit towards different things. So check out Chromebookparts.com. So
yeah, Chris hinted at it. We got a little bit different of an episode tonight. We'll get into an interview with Campus Guardian Angel, Chris.
Yep.
And it's not a paid interview. They're not sponsoring us or, advertising with us right now. But if you recall a couple episodes ago, we did kind of jokingly talk about the company that's spinning up drones to attack school shooters and to try and solve school shooter problems. So this is a pretty detailed interview with them about that product. It's going to start out with the technology, the underlying technology behind the product and how they do what they do, and then kind of get into some philosophical and operational conversations. Is that a good way to explain it, guys?
Yeah. I think we were all just intrigued how this would work, starting from a technical perspective, like wrapping your head around drones flying in your school and how that would work in an emergency, and then how you would call an emergency. And so they went through, you'll hear in the interview, they went through all the details of that. And then we just had a lot of questions around, is this the right approach and why this and stuff. And it was a fascinating interview with two guys. And you'll get to hear the interview today.
But first, Mark, you have some news, a couple news stories you said.
Yeah, I'm super excited about tonight's news because I'm going to start with a state law. And normally a state law is not super exciting, but this one I think has the strong chances of hitting all of us. So California this week, we've talked about California's push on AI legislation. They have been pushing very, very hard. The AI companies are pushing really hard back. In fact, one of the articles mentioned that the AI companies have together put about $2.5 million to push back on California's AI legislation. This week, they settled a couple of bills. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, did veto one that would ban AI chatbots for students. He understood the spirit of it, but didn't feel it was the right approach. Instead, though, he did pass a law that puts a lot of safety measures in place for students who use AI chatbots. And this is one that, California being as big as they are and this being as pretty significant as it is, I think all of these changes, they're not going to just be put in for California schools. I think we're going to see all these changes in things like Gemini and Copilot and ChatGPT for student use. So let me just give a quick overview of what this does cover and what it doesn't. So this is really meant to cover AI chatbots. So the stuff that your students would be using in a school, it specifically says this is not about customer service chatbots. This is not about like Google Home or Alexas. This is, strictly the AI type tools that we're using in schools. And companies have to put in measures to prevent students from discussing self-harm, suicidal thoughts with these. And the chatbots have to direct students to support services if they do have these conversations. The other thing, which I thought was interesting, is these chatbots now need to disclose every 3 hours to the students that, hey, you're talking to a computer. Maybe you should take a break.
Every 3
hours.
3 hours of continuous use, I guess, then?
Let me read the text exactly. Provide by default a clear and conspicuous notification to the user at least every 3 hours for continuing companion chatbot interactions that reminds the user to take a break and that the companion chatbot is artificially generated and not human.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There's those stories of like character AI and all of that. Like, this is definitely needed. Like there were definitely some protections that needed to be rolled out with chatbots. So, okay, if this is I think this is probably a first step.
It does have a few other things around, the companies do need to publish some data and statistics around the usage. So hopefully we'll be able to get some more data on how students are interacting with these things. And then finally, it ends with if a person is injured as a result of these chatbots, as a violation of this law, they have the ability to sue for damages and attorney fees and stuff. So, there's a monetary punishment on these companies if kids are harmed. Now, that's a California law, but I do think some of the measures that we talked about, the 3 hours of continuous use, the, redirecting students towards like a suicide hotline, if that's where the conversation goes, and really just preventing students from having self-harm conversations. I think that's going to impact all of us, which is great. I really like to see this put in place.
Yeah, I would agree. That we will all see those outcomes. Yeah.
Yep.
I think this is going to hit. We'll see. But my wife's car is a Kia Telluride. And when I'm driving it, it says, "Do you need a coffee break? Because I'm driving poorly."
You?
Yes. So that in place, I don't know that I'm driving poorly, but my car reminds me that I'm driving poorly. That's kind of what this is. This kid is getting lost into the chatbot. We need some things in place to redirect if that can connect and make sense. And yes, I'm not the greatest driver.
Your passengers would let you know that you're driving poorly.
My youngest daughter for sure does.
We have been passengers in Chris's car, and we have reminded Chris that he is driving poorly.
Yes. Yeah, we've had to remind Chris that he's driving. Period.
What's the next news bit?
Why do you think we took the train to Chicago and I didn't let Chris drive?
I thought about that.
Smart. Let's go to the other coast. The city of New York, they've actually separated from California in a joint lawsuit against social media companies, and they're going out on their own. So the city of New York, in collaboration with the schools and health department, submitted a 327-page complaint against Meta, parent company of Facebook and Instagram, Alphabet, parent company of Google, Snap of Snapchat, and ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok. So all these companies have been put on blast right now. New York joins over 2,000 lawsuits nationwide, saying that these companies are causing damage and harm to young students. New York has even referenced a trend, which is more of a unique to New York, but subway riding. I don't know if you've seen this.
Oh, yeah.
And they are blaming or they're mentioning that this trend is something that has been perpetuated on social media companies as further evidence that the social media companies do have an obligation to safeguard children from harm. So it's about social media harms in schools. It's about cell phone addictions, and it's about even these kinds of things like subway riding. So really interesting to see what will happen of this one. This is a pretty big, massive lawsuit. But the thing that struck me the most was the volume of school districts and cities that have sued one or more of these companies in the last few years.
Chris, what other sponsors do you have?
I already did the sponsors, Josh.
You did all of them? Okay, I didn't realize that was all. Okay.
We don't always have 6 sponsors, okay?
I had an espresso about an hour ago, which is like I never have espresso number 1 and never this late, so I'm ready to go.
You are laying in your bed.
I am. It's so I can watch the hockey game at the same time as recording, and my shoes are still on. I'm ready to go out to a bar next when we hang up.
But you are like just to kind of draw a picture here. Chris and I are standing upright at our desks, and Josh, you are horizontal on a bed.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see your pants and your shirt in the frame.
And my pants are on. Thank you.
Anyway, do you have anything else, Mark?
No. I think at this point we turn it over to Campus Guardian. This is the drones in schools that are hopefully, maybe, possibly safeguarding our schools from active shooters by way of a swarm of drones flying through your hallways and going after the threat in the school. So take it away.
All right, so we are taking on a different topic. I think we've talked about this thing on 2 episodes, but we're going to talk about the drones in schools, the killer drones in schools. Several episodes
They're not
back.
killer. They're not killer, Chris.
They're not killer.
They're not killer.
We'll unpack that. Several episodes back, Mark, you were doing the news segment and you were talking about this company, Campus Guardian Angel. And I did what I always do. While we were recording the episode, I sent them an email to see if they would talk to us. And then full transparency, Josh, Mark, you guys were surprised that I did that. These guys said yes. And then we realized we had to come up with some actual questions.
I don't know why Mark and I are ever surprised anymore.
That's true.
I was surprised that you guys were surprised. So this is not a sponsored episode. This is not us saying that we the three of us are all about drones being in schools. This is really us wanting to unpack, hey, if the drones are coming to the schools, that sounds like a tech problem, and we want to figure out if it's going to be and what these things do. So we have with us today Campus Guardian Angel. We have Justin, CEO and co-founder, and Bill, Chief Tactical Officer and co-founder. So Justin and Bill, how's it going? You guys can introduce yourselves a little bit more than that, if you would.
Sure. Well, great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. And I'm going to introduce myself first because I'm much less impressive than Bill. So, my background is building tech companies. I've built 4 of them. This is my 5th. First couple were in national security, and the second couple were in commercial. So, a bunch of time in cybersecurity world, had 5 of the big 6 intelligence agencies as customers, all the bunches of the military, and then did some commercial stuff. And now in Campus Guardian Angel, we're sort of doing dual use, using cool technology, but using it in a security context for civilian safety. So that's my background, Bill.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. Appreciate it. My name's Bill King. I'm coming from 32 years in the military, so career in the SEAL teams. So I came in 91 and was sort of in the right spot when 9/11 happened. So was able to experience all of that stuff, Iraq, Afghanistan, picking up terrorists, but also a lot of hostage rescue work in those years. Eventually, we kind of moved out to Yemen and Somalia, where we were doing the same sort of stuff, but we were also, doing a lot more predator strikes that we were controlling from CONUS. So the things that I've done in person combined with the things that I've done remotely sort of are a perfect fit for what for what we've built. Eventually made it back to the headquarters, and I was the senior enlisted leader for all the SEAL teams for the last 4 years of my career, and retired in May of 23. I was in San Diego. Justin stalks me on LinkedIn late 23 and says, "Hey, I've got this idea, but I need somebody with tactical experience to tell me whether I'm crazy or not." I said, "Well, you might be crazy, but your idea certainly isn't. And if you can build the tech that makes it run, I know it'll work because I've already done it hundreds of times, basically." So that's kind of how I end up here.
So you guys didn't know each other to begin with, right? Like he just contacted you out of the blue and.
Yep. Right out of the blue. It's almost like it's like an ad for LinkedIn.
I was going to say, was it a LinkedIn ad? Like, was he just spamming everyone, hoping for a sucker to say yes to this? Is that?
No, it was targeted. It was targeted. I saw other people saying great things about Bill, and I didn't know his background was quite as extensive when I first pinged him. But we got together in a Whataburger in sort of in kind of east of Austin, Dripping Springs, and talked about it, and I was just like, "Well, I'm just really lucky. I mean, I've stumbled into this guy who's basically G.I. Joe, and I'm the nerd in the relationship, but yeah, he has all of this great experience, and we just got together and we started iterating and working on it, and I cannot believe that it's only been a year and a half. Like, even the last 6 months, when we sit around and talk about all the crazy amount of things that have happened in the last 180 days, it seems like years. But yeah, we've been working on it together, and so it was the two of us, and then we did a demonstration in May of last year, and I then went on Facebook. So I'm working my way around all of the social media ads right here, but I went out on Facebook in a drone racing group and said, "Hey, we're looking for pilots to try and test the concept out and see if it'll work," and stumbled into the #1 drone racing pilot in North America. And so he came and raced our demo. Today he's our chief pilot, and we have 4 of the top 10 drone racing pilots in the nation and 2 of the top 5 in the world. And we're it's just been an incredible journey.
So many questions rolling through my head. So let's talk about the drones themselves. I'm assuming these aren't off the shelf DJI Mini drone?
Yeah, we build them. We make them here in Texas, and we build the PCBs. We design the PCBs. We design the drones around being able to fit through narrow doorways, so they look kind of weird when you see them in the videos, but they're a front-rear push-pull layout, and so they're pretty narrow. They're designed to go through narrow gaps, be highly agile. They have the flight characteristics of race drones, not like your wedding drone that you would see, wedding photographers using. And then they are what's known as NDAA compliant, so we don't have any Chinese chips or data, processing in the drones, and we do lots of crypto stuff in it as well. So that's I could talk more about it. I mean, I can talk a little bit more perhaps on the tech side than I usually would in these calls, given the audience. But yes, we build them, and they are American made, and that's the target we designed for.
The idea that they are racing drones, they don't have a lot of bells and whistles on them, right? So
Sure.
we're a business like this will make you very disciplined at keeping the cost down, because you don't want to price out any school in America to be able to get this. And so, when people come up and say, hey, you can charge those things while they're flying in midair with a laser beam if you want. I'm like, nope, don't want to do that. Too expensive. I got to keep the thing cheap. And then that drives the need for a really, really skilled pilot. So the drone itself, combined with the tactics that we're using, and sort of the way that the operation goes, really, really drives top tier pilots.
So what if I'm looking at a drone, obviously you described it as being more narrow. What other components have you added to this drone specifically for school safety?
So we have our PCBs and the flight controllers and other things that you'd have on a drone. We have lights on it so that we can flash them and show different colors. We have sirens that are pretty loud. We've put flash crash, so like a loud kind of firecracker that those are really designed to stun the person. We have a two-way speakerphone. We're using AI noise cancellation so that we can talk to people through the drone from our centralized ops center. And then we also have various mechanisms to put pepper kind of spraying around onto somebody who's an active shooter is trying to murder children. And then glass breaker, we've done glass breakers on it, and then we also use them as kinetic energy effects. If somebody is really intent on murdering staff or murdering students, then our goal is to stop them doing that. So that's kind of some of the stuff. And then software wise, we have a lot of crypto, and then we also have optimized around flying them from 1,000 miles away, so we can have the pilot 1,000 miles away from the drone that they're flying, but we can still fly like you would see on ESPN in a drone race, where you're weaving through gates, you're weaving through corridors and doors, just incredible flight characteristics. But the ability to do that from a long distance away is kind of critical to our whole model.
So what's the networking tech? Because I'm thinking, the school buildings that I know are brick mortar. I can't even get a cell phone signal through. So how are you able to fly a drone at high speed from 1,000 miles away?
So we have base stations, and we support meshing of the base stations throughout the school. We historically, we first set off using a waveform called Halo, which is in the 900 megahertz spectrum. But more recently, we've had issues with range on that and wattage on some of the chips, and so we've moved over to software-defined radios, which you would also see in fancy drones. So software-defined radios allow you to specify your own frequency ranges and bring your own waveform. So that's so we don't operate in the Wi-Fi spectrum because we would get jammed by the school Wi-Fi. We don't use we are doing things to the waveform to make it more suitable for our needs.
So I'm assuming you're going to run on the school's internet backbone for the connection to the, or maybe not, but regardless of what the connection is, you're flying at 30, 40, 50 miles an hour within a school building. I would imagine the latency for somebody to be able to navigate that drone safely within a building from so far away has got to be an issue, right?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely is. And so we've spent a lot of engineering effort making sure that that is as small as we can make it. So that comes to thinking about how the camera is doing frame buffering, how we're doing encoding, really optimizing the entirety of the network stack to make sure that we're limiting the round trip packet time. We actually flew a drone recently in India from Austin, 8,500 miles away, purely with using the video camera. No other autonomy sensors. So really, it's about latency and some degree of stabilization, and then just incredible talent. But yeah, latency is a big deal for us, and so we do a lot of work to shave off every millisecond we can.
Do you have to plan around, like, we're relatively close to a hospital? Do you have to plan around airport frequency or helipad frequencies? I know that there are certain FAA rules about drones and distance to helipads and emergency equipment. Does that factor into your planning or your response?
So I think the FAA piece is more about, deconflicting the national airspace and making sure you don't accidentally hit a helicopter.
Yeah, sure.
A plane. And typically we're flying inside the buildings or like 50 feet above grid zero. So we're very close to the ground. We might go outside and come in again quickly. We might go after somebody in the parking lot. So the main thing that we've been in conversation with the FAA about with some of our congressional supporters is beyond visual line of sight waivers and being able to fly them in the national airspace, but from 1,000 miles away. And we feel good that we will achieve those waivers. There's a lot of folks trying to work on beyond visual line of sight waivers with the FAA, but if you're going to grant waivers for people to deliver chicken wings 5 minutes earlier, then we think there's a strong case for granting waivers to help save kids' lives. So,
have you built in any sort of safety mechanism during flight? Like, do you guys take any effort to map walls or hallways or doorways so that if latency does become a bigger issue, the drone knows not to run into the wall if it hasn't received signal to back off before it gets too close to the wall?
So we've built in fail-safe mode so that if connection drops, the drone's going to do something intelligent. And then we are, in our next iterations, we're adding more sensors and more NPU TOPS compute to the drones to allow them to do obstacle avoidance and things with some degree of autonomy. So we're getting there, but at the end of the day, when it comes to taking decisions and running a hostage rescue mission, the talent is the most critical thing. And that's not just the pilots, it's people like Bill. We have SWAT veterans who have spent their whole lives learning to read body language and understand the reality of an event. And so it's really important to us to continue to have that whole human team in the loop, because you're trying to deal with incredibly edge scenarios that you don't have a lot of training data on. So things like don't hit a wall, hover in place, those are things that are relatively easy to do, but the real command and control and the piloting of it, that comes back to the talent. Yeah.
And maybe this is backing up a little bit. So there's an app. Someone presses the button and says there is an active shooter. So, and I guess the school gets to decide that, if that's just the school resource officers that press that button, or is that given to everyone typically? The teacher can press the button, the custodian can?
Yeah, teachers, staff, in a lot of schools, the kids can't have their phones, and that's kind of the trend, is trying to get phones out of the students' hands. But anybody who's registered on the app, should be able to trigger it. And we go through a quick verification stage. So if a teacher pushes the button, the first person I'm calling besides that teacher is the SRO.
Okay.
And immediately he and I, or she and I, are looking at the same thing. And so if I find that shooter walking down a hallway and it's clear that he's got a rifle, we're going to be like, yep, that's it, launch.
Okay. So button gets pressed no matter what, drones get deployed.
Yeah, no, we verify. So we go into a verification state first. We're looking for secondary confirmation. And just to be clear, like, especially because a lot of your end users will already have silent panic technology or panic button technology in the school. So we have our own app. You can use that. You can also use, Centegix, Raptor, one of these mainstream ones. We can integrate with their APIs so they can be a launch kind of queuing mechanism for us, and alerting. And then we also are doing some integrations with AI gun control vendors like Zero Eyes as, again, another way of us flagging, oh, you need to go take a look at this school.
Okay.
So there's multiple ways that we kind of get called. The thing that we're doing uniquely is that we're the only way to stop a lunatic with a gun other than having to send a real person with a gun to go after them. So all of the other stuff is notifying, it's making it harder to get in. But here's the problem. Most of these big school shootings, law enforcement got there. It didn't go great. Or even if they got there in 5 minutes. And the majority of mass shootings in the nation are over before the law enforcement get there. They're over in 2 minutes. And so it's kind of like in that movie Top Gun, hey, Maverick, should we launch the alert fighters? Well, it doesn't matter because they were like 12 minutes out. This thing's going to be over in 2 minutes, right?
So button gets pressed. There's a secondary contact made, or your AI camera stuff is kicking in. So then drones deployed, is that automatic, or does someone have to do something with the drones to get those rolling out?
So they're automatic when we decide to launch them.
Okay.
The box is open. You kind of saw that a clip in the video. The box is open. The drones fly straight out. So they're sat there in the boxes.
Okay.
Like it's a lot like a sprinkler system, right? You have a sprinkler system and throughout the school so that if there's a fire, you can get water on the fire immediately and it doesn't get out of control. So we're a lot like that. You have these boxes of drones throughout the school. When somebody presses the button, first off, the door's open, but we're looking to see, are we seeing people running? Are multiple people pressing a button? Do we have a clear shot of the person with a gun on video camera? If we believe if Bill, or one of our top commanders, believe that there's a credible threat, at that moment, then we're going to go after that threat. But yeah, you're still talking about seconds.
So then drones are deployed, and then that's with the pilots that you have that are
they take off. They're flying
on call and ready. Your pilots are just always ready to go.
Yeah, they're just waiting for me to tell them what box to avatar into. Okay, and even which drone they would be grabbing would be an SOP, right? So if I just tell them, hey, box 113. The guy that always grabs pepper spray is going to grab the pepper spray drone and avatars into it. Box opens, and they fly. And then as soon as they want to drop that drone, like if it's out of effects, or if we if we hit him and the drone ended up crashing into the wall and it won't fly anymore, the guy just disengages that drone, avatars into the next one, and then comes right back.
Okay.
So take us through the reality of an incident occurs in a school building. You've got a threat actor at the end of a hallway or somewhere in the building, you don't know where. What happens? Take us from start to finish. What's going to happen?
So the first thing that we do is we come in and we create all the advantages that we need to be able to make decisions in seconds. So we do a digital twin of the school that we can then annotate in any way that we want. So annotate where the first aid kits are, annotate on windows if the school has ballistic film on some of the windows, which sections are they on and which sections are clear, so that I can quickly tell the pilots, hey, fly through the top pane, not the bottom pane, that kind of stuff. We annotate where the cameras are and which way they point. So on our digital twin, I can see exactly where the camera is, and I know which way it's pointing, so that when I pull the thumbnail up, I can understand what I'm looking at, right? Somebody who stares at surveillance cameras all day gets them, they memorize them because they work in one school. We're going to avatar into a school. We're not sure which one it's going to be, but so this is, you can walk through it in a 3D walker mode, or you can look at it from a bird's eye view. And then we can also annotate, this video will show you this in a little bit, but,
just to explain to the viewers, we're seeing like a 3D overview of a school cut down to a first person view going through hallways.
So we can highlight anything we want. I can highlight rooms. I can highlight, hallways. I can label them. I can draw the route from the nearest box to the assailant. And then we subscribe to the cameras only when an event starts. And so this is showing the cursor move through the map. The closest cameras, the thumbnails pop up until you find something that's interesting, and then we have a way to be able to get a snapshot of the assailant, and we can share that with everybody. And then we drop a target on where the assailant is, and then I draw the line for the pilots to be able to know where they're going, and then they launch. So that's a lot goes into rigging the game in our favor ahead of time. It's the only way that you can make the decisions as fast as you want to be able to make them. In about 5 seconds, we want to make the first decision, which is which box am I flying out of, and what's the route to get to the shooter. And then once the drones fly, I want to have boxes configured in different places throughout the school in a way that regardless of how the incident unfolds, I can reach the shooter in 15 seconds. So that's kind of the density that we're looking for. Obviously that has to meet with budget, school budgets and whatnot. But, together with the school, we're going to make sure that we're not taking risks that we can't both agree on. Right. So there's trade-offs, right? If you've got 3 gyms, you might decide to protect the main gym where the basketball games are, and not put drones into the auxiliary gym or something like that.
In the video you're showing us, you've got 3 drones flying in. During an incident, are you flying multiple drones at a time? Do you have multiple drone operators flying these things out of a box?
Yes. It's 1 pilot per drone, and we staff the teams with 4 pilots for each team. So the idea is indoors, I want to fly waves of 3 at the assailant, and then I want to be able to launch a drone outside and lock down the perimeter as an SOP. And then I can then use that drone that's outside to vector, law enforcement officers that are just responding because they were in the neighborhood but don't know anything about the school. We've got a 2-way speakerphone on the drones, and I can just fly down to him and say, open the door for the drone and follow it. And then, I can take him right to the place where the assailant is. So to go back a little bit, what triggers our system? We have our own app that we've built, for all of the users in the school. So everybody that's registered on the app can start to get information immediately. The SRO, the school resource officer that's protecting the school, is the person that we're most interested in trying to get him to the scene as fast as possible. But when someone triggers the system, the first thing that pops up in our operations center is the digital twin. I can see who pushed the button. I can see where they are, and I know everything about them because they're registered on the app. And then I have a way to be able to, for them to be able to give me information without having to talk to me, because I don't want anybody to give their position away unnecessarily. And then based on those answers, we understand where we're going to search the cameras, or depending on what they tell me, we might have launch criteria pretty much immediately. And then we start flying waves of 3. And the idea is we're just trying to buy the time for that first human to get there. And then by the time that first human gets there, I want to have created an advantage for them, and I want to be able to give them information, right? Like, hey, I've already flown 2 waves of 3 at him. He's dropped his gun. He's wiping pepper spray out of his eyes. Like, make the entry now, go. It's it's the kind of advantage that every tactical unit is trying to get. And we just, we don't have that layer in schools yet.
So you were outlining how you were planning your attack routes and stuff like that. you plan that ahead of time, and I'm guessing you base that on modes of entry. Like if someone enters through this door, the nearest drone location is going to be here, so they're going to fly down this, hallway XYZ. How much time from initial purchase to that planning period, that digital mapping, and till live? Like from start to finish, what do you see as your typical implementation time? Because that's a lot of work. Like I'm looking at this, like that digital mapping probably doesn't happen quickly, does it?
It's not too bad. So we're using, for anybody who wants to nerd out, we're using SLAM LiDAR and then 3D Gaussian splatting. And so with this thing that looks like a lollipop, we can walk through the high school in a day, and we can capture something which looks like a video in terms of quality, but is actually billions of polygons in this giant mesh model. And then the other thing is that we can't plan. We have a tactical plan for each site, but you never know how it's going to go down. So Our goal is to say, look, we're going to practice, just the same way that Bill in elite parts of the SEAL teams, practiced. I mean, he would often say he would shoot more rounds in a year as a single individual SEAL than an entire police department will fire. And so just practice. You get good at pattern matching to certain types of situations. And then the point of the digital twin, and as we layer more and more AI tipping and queuing on top of it, is giving our team better situational awareness, like the Mission Impossible view of what's happening live. So our team has a better picture of what's happening live than people even within the school, because they're all like little ants running around the maze. We're kind of jumping in and out of this on the ground view. We can see all the cameras. We have a whole team that practices this, just like you would see on one of the TV shows about, elite special forces units. We have that whole team. It's what they practice for. So it's really a mix of having the right scan, having the right markups on which windows we can smash through, which ones have film, where the paths are, thinking about where we put the boxes so that we can get anywhere in 15 seconds. And and then just a ton of practice and getting good at it.
I mean, the whole prep cycle might take might take a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
The annotation has to be just right. So that's got to be accurate, and it's got to be checked over and over again. But this is where you gain your advantage, right? I mean, my whole life was spent going to somebody else's house, trying to get them where I don't know the floor plan. I don't know what weapons you have. I don't even know if my intelligence is correct. But when you defend a place, it's every time it's your home turf. And so don't be lazy. Get every advantage you can, right? And then that is what gives us kind of the decision dominance that we need to be able to do this stuff quickly. And then you can take all of that the virtual copy of the school, ingest it into a video game, and now we can run unlimited scenarios on your school virtually. So that's how I can train on your school. And then eventually we'll be able to bring your SRO into those rehearsals virtually. So, imagine an SRO just, hey, at 11 o'clock, put your goggles on and log in. And then some unknown scenario is going to spring, and we're going to be flying, in the game, and he'll be walking through it.
This is a simulator. This is like a video game, basically, of a real school in Bernie. Allows us to fly around it, and we're adding in multiplayer. We've put we've modeled effects out for the effects we have on the drones. Our next step is to allow the police to play in the video game too. So think Fortnite or Call of Duty, but for school safety, and you get to train in the school that you're in. And rather than having kind of not great training because you can't have these different scenarios, here we can say, okay, well, let's see what happens if we throw 30 kids running down a corridor at you. I mean, it's sort of like the Star Trek training, in the Star Trek movie where they this situation's unwinnable. But you can't do that with school kids because they're all going to get traumatized. And part of our goal is, how do we make sure that law enforcement has the best training possible? How do we make sure that in a real event, that SRO, that police officer, that brave armed teacher is never in a fair fight with the lunatic with a gun, right? How do we go ahead of them, take every corner, take every risk? We don't care if we get shot. Let us be the tip of the spear. Let us be, the first in the room, the first to do target validation, the first to get effects on that threat, so that your job as an SRO, as a police officer, is much easier. And we've done a bunch of these demonstrations now, and I will tell you, it is like we invented electricity. I mean, we watch people's heads explode in real time. Like, it's when you really see this live and you understand what it's like, it is very futuristic. But if you've got, instead of being alone in the most frightening moment of your life in a very, very difficult situation, you've now got close air support. You've got wingmen who are talking you through it, going ahead of you, figuring out what to do, getting that person distracted, getting effects on them. So you're never in like a standoff, like a Mexican stand. You're never in a shootout where it's just you and them, and we never want it to be a fair fight.
On the other key to it is that those assets belong to you in that school. You compete with no one for those, right? So if right now, if you want a drone to come over the top of a school during a school shooting, you're competing with everybody else in town that needs a drone, right? And in our model, every place we protect, those drones belong to the people that are protecting that place. They don't have to compete with anybody for them, which is an important feature.
Yeah.
So safety, you mentioned in that scenario with a SRO going down the hall, what's it like with 30 kids, and he's able to, with that goggle technology, he's able to see that. What safety are you guys building in so that you're not making a already horrible situation even worse?
So just to be clear, yeah. So like, we're flying the drones, right, from our centralized ops center.
Yes.
So we are flying typically above the kids. These corridors are high enough, and so we can fly above everybody's heads. And then, the things that we normally say on this is, firstly, we can take longer in target validation because we don't care if we get shot, right? So rather than running in a room and firing the gun immediately because you're worried you're going to die, like, we don't care if we get shot. So we can go in there, do a few laps, wait for the person to present themselves, send one in as a distraction, send the other one in to actually target the person. And those are tactics that we practice and practice and practice. So our ability to make sure that we're going after the right person is high. And then we're not having to immediately resort to a gun. We're not immediately resorting to lethal force. We're working our way up from telling them off, having an annoying siren, covering them in pepper spray. And then ultimately, I think almost everybody will give up at that point because they won't be able to see anything. But if that person's really trying to continue, then we can start, hitting them to take them down. But none of those effects are lethal. So if we do make a mistake, maybe we've got pepper spray on the wrong kid, their parents are real mad, and like we have to wash their eyes under the water tap for half an hour. But they're not having to go to gun trauma surgery, right? And so we take longer in evaluating. We're only using less lethal effects. It's less guns in schools. And then we have the best possible talent we can find. Because we're leveraging them across so many sites, and we practice and practice and practice. And that's why an elite hostage rescue unit, like, folks at JSOC, are incredibly good at it, is because they hired the best, and then they practiced and practiced and practiced. And that was the sole mission. They didn't have to go and do other things. They didn't have to go, polish the Humvees or anything else. Like, their whole mission was, this is it. This is what you're going to practice every single day. And you're going to it becomes muscle memory. So,
well, and if you think about the situation that you're in, right? I mean, not everybody understands what it feels like to be in these situations, and we spend a fair amount of time trying to describe to someone what it feels like when the first bullet is fired, and you have whatever you have, and if you wished you had something else, it's too late to get it. And you'll take anything, right? So the idea that we could make a bad situation worse is, it feels very unlikely, but it is one of the reasons why we've chosen all less lethal effects. And this is truly the only way that you can you can go up against someone with a lethal weapon using a less lethal effect because you can't do it with a human.
So my head is spinning listening to all this. I mean, the tech is very impressive. I think the thing I'm struggling with, though, is this is straight out of the battlefield. And we're seeing on the news right now a battlefield that is just plagued with drones. The footage coming out of the Ukraine-Russia conflict is horrifying. To think that we're going to bring that same technology into a classroom, for me, like, and I will say this, I'm a lifelong educator. I've grown up and worked in schools my entire life. This is very unnerving for me to bring this mentality into a classroom. What has been the reception from schools when they hear this? Because I think the three of us thought this is the most insane idea to stop school violence. Why this, and what are schools saying?
Yeah, well, I guess several comments on that. I mean, I think whenever we show this and talk about it, in all the demos we've done maybe 20 now, people go through this religious conversion experience where they're like, this is straight out of Black Mirror. This is totally crazy. This could never work. Here's the 20 reasons it can't work. And then we do the demonstration, and then they're like, well, that's so obvious. How is nobody else doing this? And that's true across kids, parents, teachers, superintendents, chief of police, politicians. It is definitely a paradigm shift. But it comes back to, what are you trying to do? What you're trying to do is solve for four things for school safety in the end. How do you get there incredibly fast? Like, it's got to be instantaneous because lots of people are dead really fast. So you've got to be able to get there incredibly quickly, which means you've actually got to already be there on site. Second thing is, it has to be, elite. We don't want this to be kind of amateur hour. So just arming every teacher. Teachers don't want to be armed. They don't want to go around trying to, one day think they might be called on to kill somebody. That's not why they signed up to be a teacher. They want to be nurturing, and you don't want to put one of these people in a situation where you're asking them to kill another human being who they may know, like that's the first time they've ever done a thing. I mean, that's really setting them up to fail. The third thing is got to be scalable. Like, you can't rely on three special guys who all decided to volunteer because they believed in what that doesn't work when we've got 130,000 schools. And then the final one, of course, has got to be affordable. So we would often say we're like having a SEAL team in the parking lot, but at a tiny fraction of the cost. And then I think in terms of, you're right that drones are being used in the battlefield, but they're being used lots of other places too. Most high schools we talk to have drone racing clubs. They see drones flying around all the time. When we talk to kids, having a box that is in the ceiling with some drones in it is a lot less militarizing than having a bunch more police officers with AR-15 strapped to their chest walking around inside the school building. I mean, that's what students are telling us. And they all do think about this because, just to give you a stat, the CDC found that last year, over 600,000 high schoolers took a gun to school. That means that there are guns in most high schools most days of the week. Guns are all there all the time, and it's an arms race, and the kids all want to have them to feel like they're protected, whatever. But it doesn't allow for immediate escalation. That's why it's part of the reason why we see so many shootings. So I would say, there is a scary element to how some drones are being used in the battlefield, but they are extremely effective at confronting people with guns. And if you had a ton of folks walking around the school in hazmat suits all day, that would be pretty scary. I could really die. I could really get burnt to death. But nobody thinks about sprinkler heads on a sprinkler thing and thinks, well, gosh, look at all these sprinklers. I mean, I could get burnt alive today. No, they're just part of the wallpaper. So again, what we tell parents is, we're only going when your kid's life is at serious risk. And in that moment, you will take anything to save their lives. We're not just strolling around, seeing what happens. We're not flying around, breaking up school fights. We're not stopping, little Johnny from kicking the Coke machine. Like, we're only going when there's a real possibility that your child could die. Just like the sprinkler system isn't there to water the plants. It only turns on when they could all burn to death. And so you're really not going to see the drones. In most of the schools that we've got put into, you'll probably never see them. Maybe you'll see them in one or two active shooter drills. But we have heard from a lot of students that, they don't trust that one SRO is going to become Rambo in that moment and save their lives. They don't think that's likely. And And they do like the idea of, okay, so I've got an air support. There's a credible elite service that's going to try and defend me and my friends if one of those loner kids turns out to be an active shooter, or if some lunatic comes into school with a gun. So we thought we would have more pushback than we did, to be quite honest, but we have not found as much as we expected. When people really see it, they think through how it works. I mean, I wish I grew up in the UK. I didn't have, I think, a single school shooting when I was a child, going through school, but my kids are in school here, and they went through active shooter training at age 5 last week, and they came home scared. And, we want them to be less scared, because we think all kids deserve an education free from the threat of mass shootings and gun violence. So,
well, and I think we all agree with that wholeheartedly, right? We want an education that's free of violence. I think that the thing that I struggle with this particular solution is you're putting the onus on the backs of schools to fix the problem and allowing those in power to do nothing, right? And I think here comes my personal frustration, where we're not tackling the core of the problem, which is bad people have access to guns. And rather than tackling that problem, we're saying, hey, schools, you got a budget for drones to be able to protect your campus. And I mean, we've talked about the price of this kind of thing. It is not cheap, right? It is not cheap to have a SEAL team on standby with some of the best drone operators. And I think while it is affordable in the grand scheme of things, the vast majority of schools are going to look at this and say, I can't possibly afford this. And how can you possibly think that the majority of schools are going to be able to afford a SEAL team via drone in all their hallways?
I mean, all down to cost, right? So like our pricing is, pricing in the managed service is a few bucks a kid a month. For my kids to be protected during their entire lifetimes in K12 is about the same as one sports trip or cheerleading trip, and so as the citizens, I think we have to decide how important are your kids. Like we're a fraction of the cost of a sprinkler system. In the last 3 years, there were almost 1,000 school shootings and almost 0 fires. So, do you think to save money, we should stop putting sprinkler systems into schools? Because it probably won't happen. Well, no, and as a parent, I mean, you're telling me it's a few bucks a kid a month to have my kids defended by an Air Force? Of course I want that. I mean, of course, my kids are the most precious thing in my life. And so we haven't, I mean, whenever we talk to a parent and they find out, oh gosh, and the reason why it can be that cost effective is because from a small number of teams in Texas, from 4 rooms of our elite operators, we can protect 10,000 schools at once. On your central question around, gun control, access to guns, look, I'm a Brit. I come from a place that's different to here, but I'm not going to, none of us have magic wands. People want to continue to own guns in this nation, and nothing in my lifetime or whatever I say is going to change that. I want my kids to feel safer. I want to feel like we're doing something about it. I want to feel like the number of kids getting killed every year through gun violence is going to decrease. I want to be part of the solution to that problem, but I'm also not going to wish for a parallel universe that I don't think is ever going to exist. And when I die, I think there'll still be more guns than there are people in America. So I think it's on the funding side, we are working, to try and keep the cost as low as we can in how we do the hardware. We could be 10 times the price that we're at and still sign up all the private schools. But that's not our goal. Our mission is to make sure every kid is safer. And we're working that, with parents. We're working it with legislators. We have this Florida line item, which is allowing us to prove out the technology in Florida. We're working on a similar process in Georgia. We're not saying to schools, here is our amazing, great service, and if you can just grow that money tree in the backyard, then everything will be fine. I think as citizens, we need to decide enough is enough. I don't want my kids to be scared. I want to protect them from the number one way that kids die in this nation. And I'm willing to pay a few dollars extra in tax if I can get an elite coverage that, again, in most of these cases, like in Parkland, we interviewed one of the parents who saw the demo of our staff, lost his son in the shooting at Parkland. And as soon as he saw it, it was like, yeah, if that had been there at Parkland, you'd have saved everybody. I mean, my son would still be there. And So that's what motivates us. At the end of the day, it's a hard problem, but I'd rather be working on a practical solution that's pragmatic and get done, because like we're all about trying to help keep kids safe.
I think it's worth pointing out, yes, the number one of the leading causes of death for kids is guns, but that statistic is from home incident, not school incident. Just throwing that out.
That's true, but it's also true in schools. I mean, in school,
no, I not
both,
disagreeing with that statement at all. But the vast majority of child deaths from guns happen at home, not schools.
That's true. But yeah, I mean, in the last 3 years, there've been 995 school shootings with 800 kids killed or wounded. Now, is that and during that time, the last time there was a mass fire in a school that killed lots of kids was 1958. So there have been thousands of children shot in schools, and so again, like, I understand that there's limited money. I understand that schools are always on a budget. We want to work with them to help find those funds. But it is still the number one way within schools that children die. And, we would like to change that.
But to the comparison around, deaths from fire, the reason why the death rate from fires, either at home or work or school, has declined was because our government got together and said, what rules and policies can we put in place that will lead to actionable results? And that's where we have sprinkler systems and trainings and fire drills and all these kinds of things. This feels like, to me, like we're skirting the problem, and we're allowing our government to get away from their responsibility in reducing gun deaths and putting the onus back on schools. And it's being done in a way that, and this is a very subjective opinion, doesn't feel safe. It is saying that, yeah, there's going to be school shootings, and so rather than prevent them in the first place, we're just going to deal with them as they come. And parents will have different opinions here and there. We have a problem in our community with parents being very against metal detectors because they don't want their students walking into a school that looks and feels like a prison. And so I think that there are parents out there that will say, I don't want my child looking up in math class and seeing a weapon in the corner, knowing that what that could stand for and what the inevitable
they wouldn't see a weapon, right? So they're going to see a white box up in the ceiling of the corridor where they can't see anything other than a white box. But I mean, again, I take your point. I would say, though, that like the reason why there haven't been lots of school shootings is because, or lots of fires, is because the government mandated, that there has to be sprinkler systems in every school. It's not a question of whether the school wants to do it. The government stepped up legislatively and said, no, it's going to be part of the fire code. You are not allowed to put kids in a building without having sprinkler systems in it. We can't ban matches. We can't ban fire. So we're going to come up with a mechanism to deal with it so that when one happens, it gets put out really quickly. And since then, there hasn't been a mass fire in a school. And so, yeah, I mean, we absolutely agree with you that like the onus is on legislators. The onus is on legislators to come up with real strategies, pragmatic strategies that can be enforced so that every kid, every parent benefits from suppression mechanisms to suppress lunatics with guns, as opposed to, just letting every school decide by themselves. I mean, I'm totally with you. Like, I think legislators should be involved in that. But I think in terms of your central point, I mean, I get that, like, there are lots of people out there who just say, well, if we could make all the guns go away, then a lot less kids would die. But I don't live in the universe where I think that's going to happen. And so, that debate needs to continue. The way that people get access to guns and all the other questions, that should continue. We're not really in that debate. We're just saying, look, we're dealing with reality as it is right now. And as reality is right now, the greatest chance of one of my children dying is that they get shot. And I want to make that as small as I can. And I want that to be as small as it can be for every parent. And so far, every parent that we've talked to, whether they're on the left or the right, they would still say, yep, I mean, we're going to continue to have these debates about access to guns and other questions. But if you can make my kids safer, then I want that. And that's just what we found. I mean, again, we'll see as we have more of these conversations, engaging with stakeholders, listening to opinions. Some want to advertise they've got it as a deterrent. Some want to keep it hidden and not let anybody know it's there. But all of these major shootings, Bill, that you've looked at, like Uvalde, Parkland, we think we feel pretty good that we would have saved the majority of the lives, in some cases, all of them. And, I wish I lived in a world where people didn't want to harm other people. But since we do, I want to make it hard for them to do that.
And you may not want to or be able to answer this, but what type of adoption have you guys seen? What's your install base, or do you feel comfortable sharing that?
Yeah, I can talk briefly on that. So we are going through, we've done demonstrations at 20 schools. We will be putting hardware into the schools in November and December timeframe. And then we are going live in January. We only came out of stealth in March. And we have been in this conversation with stakeholders like police, like parents, like superintendents, to understand how they'd like to experience this, who should get to see what, who should get to share in which bits of situational awareness. So there's been this kind of consulting back and forth feedback over the last 6 months as we've kind of got the technology finalized in a form that we feel comfortable deploying it, and then actually turning on the system live. I mean, at that point, Bill's raising his hand and saying, I'm here and I'm good to go for hostage rescue. And so we really want to make sure, my job is to make sure that he feels comfortable doing that because he's set up to win. So I do think by, the end of the year, we will have put boxes of drones in both Florida and Texas schools. And we have some other states we're talking to. And I do think you'll see it growing. But that's where we are in the journey, going live in January. And then I think we'll see growth and see us going into other states.
For a bit of clarity, when you say Florida and Texas schools, you don't mean all schools. You mean that
not all.
20 or so that you've done proof of concept or demos with.
Yeah, it's a mix of public and private schools. We have several public districts in both that are interested, and we have private schools in both that are in contracting with us. And so yeah, I mean, it's we don't want to try and do 1,000 schools right now, right? We want to go.
Yeah, you got to scale, right?
Yeah, we've got to go into a small number of schools. We're going to find all of the what happens ifs, the bugs, the issues, the questions, and then we're going to iterate. We're going to improve. We're going to learn and we're going to adapt. And so yeah, we will grow, but I think we're seeing a lot of folks come through the front door, and our opinion internally is that when we intervene in the first event, I think we'll see a lot of growth from there. I'd also say, it's not just about when there's actually an active shooter. I showed you a little bit about the apps and how we can improve situational awareness. Our goal is also to reduce the trauma and PTSD in teachers and parents from false alarms. 2 years ago, in the 22 to 23 year, Pew Research found that a third of high schools had gun lockdowns they thought were real. And we have talked to teachers in Round Rock High School. We've talked to teachers in Florida, charter schools, who had to stand for 50 minutes in the pitch black, in a toilet, surrounded by students with no updates, no information, no knowledge of what's happening. Particularly in Round Rock, they heard the police kicking the toilet stalls as they went through clearing, and they thought it was real gunfire. And so they experienced it as real because nobody was there to tell them, no, that's just somebody clearing the toilets. That is not gunfire. And they clearly still have PTSD. It is super obvious when you interview them that they are still traumatized. So, even for false alarms, our goal is to have a liaison that is live talking to staff, have another one talking to law enforcement, have another person in our team talking to parents, giving you a better picture of what's happening so that you don't have kind of unnecessary trauma from imagining the worst possible scenario when really it was just another swatting event. So just something else to, there would add.
I feel like we're ready to wrap, and I feel like we're probably, I don't know, Josh and Mark, probably feeling similar here at the end as we did at the beginning with lots of questions, because this thing is just so layered. An easy thing for me to say that I really thought about when Mark was talking about like why drones, It reminds me in a way different kind of scaling, but we have issues with vapes in our school. So then vape detectors in bathrooms were invented. So, here is an issue, but we're not going to fix issue, but we're going to put in things that detect to try to, it's layered, right?
That don't work.
Yes. And then my school a couple of years ago, we had a lot of issues with kids needing to use the restroom to the point of they're sneaking out all the time. So then we did electronic hall passes. That's not fixing the issue. That just made it into a tech problem. And then we had, again, it's not the same at all, but it is. We had parents upset that we were now tracking when their kid goes to the bathroom. And why are we doing that? So then, now we're getting into, let's talk about school shootings and fix this. And it's a problem we need to fix. And in all the layers from government all the way down to, is drones the answer to this or not? So it's complicated. If you're listening to this, you know that every once in a while, the three of us, we agree a lot, and sometimes we have differing opinion, then we kind of argue and banter well with each other. I think this is one that we could do, and we probably will talk about it off episode quite a bit. There's a lot of things to discuss, and there's a lot of banter here. These are big decisions to make. So we appreciate you guys and your willingness to come on. We appreciate you answering some not so easy questions. We should have put up like little scorecards for these guys on how we felt about how they answered, so they would be able to pulse check us as it went. But we do appreciate you guys coming on. Guys, any thoughts before we do wrap?
I was going to say, I was just trying to get Bill to smile the whole time, and I think you just got a little bit of a smile at the end
Bill,
there.
thank you for your service, by the way.
Mission accomplished.
You're welcome. I had a great time doing it. So
hey, you did get him to smile just then, at least.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much.